All right, so let's look at how we can solve this question on complex numbers, okay? The question here says, find the real and imaginary parts of the complex number. You have this, okay? So I'll just take down this question and then we'll try to find the solution. So in this question here, I'm giving this as 1 plus 2i all cubed into 1 plus I into 2 minus I. I have this. So in this question here, we're asked to find the real and imaginary part of this particular complex number. Okay, so how do we solve this? Now, if you look at this, this is a fraction, and we have this one here, this part as the numerator of the fraction, and then this part here as the denominator of the fraction. To solve this, we'd have to treat the numerator separately. We would have to simplify the numerator and also simplify the denominator, and then we can combine our answers. Okay, now let's look at numerator. For the numerator, there I have 1 plus 2i cubed. Now 1 plus 2i cubed, when we say something like a cubed is the same thing as saying a squared times a. Is the same thing. So in essence, 1 plus 2i cubed can still be written as 1 plus 2i squared, and then you now have 1 plus 2i. All right, it's the same thing. Our first task would now be to pick up this one here, 1 plus 2i squared, and simplify that. And if you do that, we'll have 1 plus 2i squared. Now, the value of 1 plus 2i squared, or when we say a term is being squared, it means that term is multiplying itself. So that becomes 1 plus 2i multiplying 1 plus 2i. And to solve this, the task is simple. Here's my first bracket, this one here, I'll call this 1. Here's my second bracket, I'll call this 2. In expanding, I will take the first term of my first bracket. The first term of my first bracket is 1 here, or plus 1. So it becomes 1 into, I'll take all the terms in the second bracket. That becomes 1 plus 2i. We'll have this. Next up, I'll take the second term of the first bracket. The second term of the first bracket is this one here, plus 2i. So it becomes plus 2i would multiply everything in my second bracket. All right, that's the concept of expansion. So it becomes 1 plus 2i. So we have this. All right, let's expand this. If we work with this, this will be equal to, you have 1 multiplying 1. 1 times 1 obviously is 1. So I have 1 plus, you have 1 times 2i. That gives you 2i plus 2i times 1 gives you 2i plus times plus gives you plus 2 times 2 gives you 4. I times I gives you I squared. All right. So you have this as being equal to, this is equal to 1 plus 2i plus 2i gives you 4i plus you have 4 into I squared. Now note that in complex number, the concept of I squared is simply equal to minus 1. All right. It's something that you should note. Or I squared, yep, it's equal to minus 1. It's an important concept you should note in complex number, which we've already explained in our previous class. So if you missed our previous class on complex number, simply check the video description and I'll leave a link to our first class on complex number in the video description. All right. So if I have 4i squared, it becomes 4 into I squared is minus 1. So I have this. All right, let's work on this. This will be equal to, I'm having this as 1 plus 4i. You have plus times minus, and that's minus. That becomes minus 4 times 1 is actually 4. So it becomes minus 4. Simplifying further, this would be equal to, I'll take the terms that do not have I. That's 1 and minus 4. And if I punch 1 minus 4, I'll have minus 3. Then bring down the one that has the I. That becomes plus 4i. So with this now, I've gotten my first part there, minus 3 plus 4i. Now, minus 3 plus 4i is the value of 1 plus 2i squared. Remember that in our initial question, the power there was to power 3, which means the squared, the value we get after squaring will still multiply it with 1 plus 2i. All right, so that means our answer there, which is minus 3 plus 4i, which is the value of 1 plus 2i squared, we'll still multiply it again with 1 plus 2i, so that we'll get the value of 1 plus 2i cubed. Okay, now let's expand this. This is equal to, again, we'll follow the same concept. The first term here, minus 3, so minus 3 multiplies everything in second bracket, 1 plus 2i. Next up, the second term in the first bracket, plus 4i, so becomes plus 4i, so plus 4i multiplies everything in the second bracket, that's this one here, 1 plus 2i, so becomes 1 plus 2i. So we have this. All right, let's expand this. So in the expansion, this would be equal to minus 3 times 1 is actually minus 3. So I have minus 3. Minus 3 times plus 2i. Minus 3 times plus 2 is minus 6. You add the i. Plus 4i times 1. Anything times 1 is itself. That becomes plus 4i. Plus 4 times plus 2 gives you plus 8. Then I times I gives you I squared. So we have this. All right, so we have this term here. Again, remembering that I squared is equal to minus 1. This will now be equal to, I have this as minus 3, okay, minus 6i. So if I take minus 6i plus 4i, minus 6 plus 4 is minus 2. It becomes minus 2i. Next up, I'm having this as plus 8. So plus 8 into I squared. I squared is minus 1. That becomes this as minus 1. And that's equal to, this is equal to minus 3. Next, I have minus 2i. Bring this down. It becomes minus 2i. Minus 8 times 1 is minus 8. So I'm having this as minus 8. Now I'll take the terms that do not have I attached to them. That's minus 3 minus 8. If you punch minus 3 minus 8, you have minus 11. And then you have this one here, which is minus 2i. So in essence, our final result is minus 11 minus 2i. So what this means is that the value of the numerator, the final value of the numerator, 1 plus 2i all cubed, should be equal to minus 11 minus 2i. So with this, we've gotten the value of the numerator. Our next task will now be come to your denominator. For your denominator, okay, let's call this equation 1 just to keep reference. We'll call this equation 1. So equation 1 basically is the answer we get when we simplify the numerator. All right, with that, let's look at denominator. For denominator, what I have there is 1 plus I multiplying 2 minus I. So let's take that and simplify it. So I'm having 1 plus I, 1 plus I multiplying 2 minus I. Let's get this done. So as usual, take the first term here, 1, multiply everything in the second bracket, 2 minus I. Take the second term here, plus I, multiply everything in second bracket, 2 minus I. So I have this as 2 minus I. Let's multiply this here. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times minus I is minus I. Excuse me. Minus I. Okay. Plus I times 2 is plus 2I. And then finally, plus times minus is minus. I times I is I squared. So I have this. Again, remembering that the value of I squared is equal to minus 1. This will now be equal to 2, that's 2, minus I plus 2I. Now, when we say minus I, it simply means minus 1I. So minus I plus 2I is the same thing as saying minus 1 plus 2. Minus 1 plus 2 is equal to plus 1. Plus 1 times I gives you plus I. So it becomes plus 2 plus I into minus We know that I squared is equal to minus 1. So this as what there? Minus 1. Okay. And that's equal to, this becomes 2 plus I minus minus 1 gives you plus 1. So I'm having this as plus 1. I have this. And that's equal to, if you work on this, this becomes 2 plus 1. That gives you 3. So it becomes 3 plus I. All right, so my answer there for denominator is 3 plus I. So what does this mean? This means that if I have the complex number 1 plus 2I, 1 plus 2I, this all to power 3, all divided by 1 plus I, 1 plus I, multiplied by 2 minus I. This particular complex number will be equal to, when I simplified numerator, my answer was minus 11 minus 11 minus 2I. This was my numerator, all over, when I simplified denominator, my answer was 3 plus I. So we have this. All right, so from our first equation now, or our first complex number, we now have this particular one here. So this is what we get when we simplify the numerator and denominator separately. So I now have this as my answer. So what next? Our next task now would be to pick up this one here and work on this. So this will be equal to, this becomes 11 minus 2I all over 3 plus I. How do you simplify this? Now, if I look at this, what is wrong here is that the, the denominator of this fraction, what is wrong here is that the denominator of this fraction is a complex number that's having I here. And we said we do not allow, or it's not proper to have the denominator of a fraction as a complex number. So in cases like this, what do? You have to rationalize. How do you rationalize? I'll take the numerator, minus 11 minus 2I, all over, I will take denominator, that's 3, plus I, will have this. Now what we'll do is that we'll multiply this. I will multiply the numerator by the conjugate of the denominator. When we say conjugate of denominator, what do we mean? If I have 3 plus I, for instance, the conjugate of 3 plus I is simply 3. We'll change the plus to what there? Minus, and then we'll put I. So in getting conjugate of denominator, what that means, in getting the conjugate of this complex number, it means changing the sign attached to the imaginary part, change it to the opposite. That becomes 3 minus I. So I'm here. So what next here? That means I'm multiplying numerator and denominator by the conjugate of denominator. That becomes 3 minus I, this, all over 3 minus I. So let's multiply this. How do we multiply this? This is equal to, in multiplying these two, we said the first task is use the first term of the first bracket, that's minus 11. So use minus 11 to multiply everything in second bracket, that's this one here. So it becomes minus 11 into 3 minus I. Use the second term of the first bracket, that's minus 2I. So minus 2I. Multiply everything in the second bracket, 3 minus I. So 3 minus I, we have this. This all divided by, so this divided by, again, we'll repeat the same procedure here. Use the first term of the first bracket, 3. Multiply everything in second bracket, 3 minus I. Use the second term of the first bracket plus I. Multiply everything in the second bracket, 3 minus I. So we have this. All right, so let's work on this. So from here, this would be equal to, so I'm having this as being equal to, first things first, minus 11 times 3 is minus 33. So minus 33 minus 11 times minus I. First things first, you'd have to multiply the minus. So minus 11 times, or minus times minus here gives you plus. So I'm having plus. I have 11, that's this times I. 11 times I gives you 11I. So I have 11I. With that one sorted, let's move on to this one here. Minus 2i times 3, that gives you minus 6i, minus 6i. Minus times minus here, minus minus gives you plus, so it becomes plus 2i times I gives you 2i squared, so plus 2i all squared. So that's for my numerator. Let's get to denominator. For denominator, what do I have next here? You have 3 times 3, that's 9. So that gives you 9 into 3 times minus I. 3 times minus I gives you minus 3I. Next up I have plus I times 3. Plus I times 3 gives you plus 3I. And then finally I have plus times minus, that's minus. So I have minus. And then finally I now have I times I. So I times I gives you I squared, so minus I squared. Let's proceed with this. This is equal to, now from this, let's start with the numerator there. You have minus 33, minus 33. Next up you have plus 6, plus 11 minus 6. Plus 11 minus 6 gives you plus 5i. So I have this as plus 5i into, next up I have this as plus 2. Plus 2 into, we've said this that I squared is simply equal to minus 1. That's minus 1 all over this, all over. The next thing we have there is 9. So I'm having this as 9. Now next up I have minus 3i plus 3i. Minus 3i plus 3i gives you 0. Alright, just like saying minus 3 plus 3, that gives you 0. Next up is minus. So I have minus I squared. I squared is minus 1. That becomes minus 1. So we have this. Alright, so this is now be equal to, I have minus 33 plus 5i plus 2 times minus 1 is minus 2. So we have this. Alright. Okay, this is all over. I have 9 minus minus 1 is plus 1. And this is now equal to, if I work on numerator, this becomes, take the terms that do not have I attached to them, minus 33 minus 2. Minus 33 minus 2 gives you minus 35. So that's minus 35. And then plus, bringing the term that has I, plus 5i. So this all over. So this divided by, if I look at denominator there, I have 9 plus 1. 9 plus 1 gives you what there? 10. So I have this. All right. Proceeding with this, this is equal to, all right, so what we'll have to do next is this. We have to break this into two separate parts. The separate parts include the first part here, this, that's minus 35 all over the denominator there, 10. Then the sign there attached to the second part is plus. My next term there is 5. All right, so it becomes 5 all over denominator there, 10. Then bringing your I. So we have this. If you look at this, we can still break this down to lowest term, and that's equal to, for this, 10 can be divided by 5, that gives you 2. 35 divided by 5, that gives you 7. That becomes minus 7 all over 2 plus 5 divided by 5, that gives you 1. 10 divided by 5, that gives you 2. That becomes 1 all over 2i. So you have this. So basically, your answer there is minus 7 over 2 plus 1 over 2i. All right, so that's how you solve this particular question. Okay, don't forget, as I said, we've already treated complex number in a previous class. I'll leave the link to the class on complex number in the video description. All right, okay guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. So like this video, leave a comment, tell us if you enjoyed this video in the comment section. Also, don't forget to subscribe. If it's your first time here, or if you're yet to subscribe, please do well to subscribe to this channel, as well as hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever we upload a new content. and then share this video to your friends so that they can also learn. You can check out my courses and my books on my website. Simply visit www.jonahemmanuel.com/courses to see the available courses, or you can check out www.jonahemmanuel.com/books to see the available books. Register an account to the website and then proceed to get any of the courses or books. Or you can join my channel membership to get access to exclusive content. All right, so you can join my channel membership. I'll leave a link to both my website and the channel membership in the video description. Okay, all right, guys, thank you and see you in our next class.